Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar for the Key Astrology Cycles of 2023. I'm Sheila Belanger. Thanking the ancestors and the land that holds it. Yeah, there I am. So here's a quote from Deepak Chopra. One of the keys to harnessing the potentially unlimited power of the mind is to expand your level of self-awareness. I think it takes a village, right? We got it. So here's what you're going to experience in the webinar today. Okay, so I'm attempting in this webinar to explore the 2023 astrology cycles. So I'm going to start out with some really good astrology basics. I'm going to talk about at length some of the key astrology cycles of 2023 and my suggestions for how you navigate the cycles to support your sanity and your heart staying open to yourself and the world. And optionally, I'm going to give you a guided journey to an astrology ally to support you as we head into the new year. And then I'm going to really give you some promotion on my Transformation Journey Roadmap course, which I'm opening up in a couple of weeks, which is really an amazing resource for you if you're drawn to guided imagery and breaking those patterns of the wounded inner figures that are holding you hostage. Okay. And yes, there is a handout coming momentarily. Thank you. Come on. First of all, who the hell is this coyote on your screen? Who is playing checkers with Mercury retrograde and losing poorly? My name is Sheila Belanger, and I call myself an intuitive transformation coach, and I'm an archetypal astrologer. And as a certified coach and astrologer, I use a process-oriented approach to guide you at the edge, the place where your past and future selves meet. It's such a delicious betwixt and between place, and there's so much incredible transformation that can happen there. And for 40 years, I have effectively translated consciousness shifting practices into life-changing ways for thousands of grateful students and clients. Many of you are here, and thank you so much. So have your journal nearby so you can reflect on your personal transformation journey. And I'm going to give you a handout in just a moment. But first, I'd like to do a threshold process. It feels like a good idea. And what I mean by that is we're going in. So let's take a moment to really pause. We had so much activity at the threshold. And it's so important because we want to hear each other. You want to hear me, and I want to hear you through the chat and feel like I'm communicating clearly to you. So that's a longing for clear communications. I really feel that at the threshold. So I invite you to be here and turn off the extra devices and tabs. And if you haven't already, just really make a supportive personal space for yourself. And that can mean as simple as closing the door, turning your phone off, taking a breath. And recognizing this journey with me is choice-based. Now, mostly it's going to be information and slides, but the chat is always there. You might make comments when I give you, if you stay for the optional guided journey, you might want to share something in the chat. So I want you to feel whatever's happening is right for you. If it's not right, don't do it. Step away. And then I invite you in what I call the 3 C's of online community. Even though this is a webinar format and you're not seeing each other's face, you can still be with each other in the chat and the energy of it. So the 3 C's for me are confidentiality, courage, and compassion. Confidentiality means anything shared in the chat, especially if it's personal, please hold it in your heart and keep it right there, okay? Courage, the courage to lean in and show up and honor your journey as you step into the new calendar year. You're longing for change. Yeah, thank you. The emojis are coming in for those 3 C's. I've got some of my Vibes community on board. We do this all the time. This is my private membership for transformational agents. Courage to be true to yourself, to honor yourself and everyone else. We're all doing the best we can in this crazy cauldron of initiation right now. And compassion, especially for yourself and for everyone. Because, as Rumi says, this being a human is a guest house. Inside and out, you never know who's showing up. Okay. Thank you all for the hearts. It's beautiful. Got my peeps. Okay, so here's an experiential threshold practice. It's very simple. It's called 3 deep breaths to arrive and be here. So I invite you to take a nice, deep, conscious breath and feel the earth energy. Just breathe in the earth energy into your whole being. And then gently exhale and give to Mother Earth what you don't need. She'll compost it. She knows what she's doing. And a second big breath in. Imagine breathing in the sky, the expansive, open sky. No matter the weather, just breathe in that sky all the way in, and then exhale and let go. And then finally, the third breath consciously. If you want to touch your heart with your hand, you can. Just take a breath in with your heart. Breathe in love. Breathe in love and support. All the way in, and then breathe out love and support all the way out. Okay? Thank you. Everything is interconnected. Yes, even Mercury retrograde is interconnected with us. Thank you. Human and other than human, visible and invisible sky and earth. We know this is ancient truth in so many faith and spiritual traditions of this deep interconnectedness of all things. And I love this quote from Anne M. Nordhaus. For all its complexity, however, astrology remains fundamentally simple. It offers a time-honored system of symbols that sum up key aspects of human life while providing profound insights and practical guidance. It's a beautiful way to describe astrology. I really love what she's done here. What's astrology? Here's some astrology basics. The study of how the planets and their cyclic patterns symbolically resonate with human life. That's one simple way of talking about astrology. What are planets? They're symbolic of your core inner figures. Yeah, that guest house of infinite number of characters inside. Now, we know the planets are named after mythic gods, goddesses, and characters. And this is patriarchal Roman and Greek myth, so it's got the mindset of patriarchal consciousness, and yet it's mythic, so it's beyond any kind of human construct in that regard. So, for example, Mars is seen as the god of war, and Venus as the goddess of love and beauty, and Uranus is the god of the sky, and so forth. So the roots of astrology are in Greek philosophy, and even before that. But then there's the idea of an archetype. And one way of defining archetype is archa first and type model. These are energies that have been present since beginning of time and are inherent in our collective existence. They're often found in the imaginal realm of images, poetry, metaphor, mysterious, beyond the personal, beyond the ego, deeply universal experiences. Now, from a spiritual perspective, a planet symbolizes an archetype, a universal principle or force that expresses in the human psyche and societal behavior on many levels. So as you go to any kind of forecast with astrology and the planets, really what we're seeing is this mirroring of the planets moving through the heavens. They're mirroring to us what's happening inside of us. And I will say to folks, it's not causal. I mean, I just did. I said, yeah, Mercury retrograde is doing it to me. It's easy to jump to that. But really, on a deeper level, there's a resonance that's happening. It's not that the planets are doing anything to us. They're mirroring to us currents, energies, evolutionary calls. And so we track where the planets are, they're where they are in the zodiac wheel. We track what kind of relationship they're making with each other as telling a story, an archetypal story of what's in the moment or what's coming. And that's what I'm doing with you today, is I'm giving you an archetypal story of what's up. And what are the zodiac signs? Well, the zodiac signs are named after star constellations, and they appear to form a belt around the Earth in which the planets seem to travel in their cyclic movements. I use this image a lot because I think it's so easy to see, which is that you're looking at this image. Here's the Earth in the center. We think we are the center of the universe. And from our perspective in the Earth, the zodiac wheel is a belt of star patterns, which we name after characters. Mythic characters. And in this particular example, the sun ball, the planets move around us, apparently, from our perspective, against the backdrop of that zodiac wheel. So this looks like this moment. The sun is between Gemini, the twins, and Cancer, the crab. So we might say the sun is early Cancer, just that image. But that's what the zodiac signs is. They're really a placeholder in the heavens for the planets. And the zodiac signs symbolize the energetic expression of the planetary archetypes. Now, in this webinar, we're going to explore some key archetypal planetary cycles from 2023. And I want to review some of the key cycles that the USA has been in, because it has a chart just like all of us do. And even though those cycles are formally mathematically done, they're not done. So I want to keep reminding you, because yes, you have your own individual journey of growth and evolution, and you are embedded in a culture and a system and society, many systems, including those of us who are either live in the States or Americans or have relationship with the US because of what a big presence it is in the world channel. It's good to know what their cycles are. Be like, what the hell's going on, right? And again, I keep seeing in the chat, apologies for the difficulty with the sound, and just really trusting you'll hear it better on the replay. So I want to review a key astrology cycle of 2022. And here's a quote for it from Sissi Gavrolaki. Sometimes it's not the times you decide to fight, but the times you decide to surrender that makes all the difference. We're going to talk about Mars retrograde in Gemini. It's a current cycle we're in right now. I think of it as an attitude adjustment for your exhausted mind. You got one of those? I got one of those. Okay. Courageously stop fighting battles not yours to fight, and shift what exhausts you. So, in the retrograde cycles of planets, when a planet appears to move backwards in its orbit around us, it's called retrograde motion. And there are always growth opportunities when there's retrograde cycles. It's an opportunity to take a time out in the areas of life connected to that planetary character, to review and reassess and redefine. So important. That's, it's frustrating, but it's always a timeout. It's a timeout. Wait, let's look at this. So Mars is retrograde. Planet Mars is retrograde in the sign of Gemini between 26 and 8 degrees of Gemini. Don't worry about the degree measurements if it doesn't make sense to you, but many of you on the call are astrologers, or you know astrology, so you can put it in your chart to see where specifically in your chart this Mars retrograde is happening. Formally, it's from October 30th of 2022 to January 12th. So yay team, a couple days more and Mars will be going forward. Now, there's something called the sensitivity zone, which means before the planet actually goes retrograde, it kind of enters the zone of where it's going to retrograde. And then after it formally stops being retrograde, looks like it's done moving backwards and goes forwards again, it spends a little bit more time in that zone. So it doesn't really clear it till a little bit later. So that's called a sensitivity zone, shadow zone. It's called many things in astrology, but basically it means, yeah, you can look at the exact time of the retrograde cycle, but you got to give some time on the front end and the back end, because it ain't over until it's over, right? So I say this because many of you are super sensitive to the astrological energies. And so even though Mars is about to finish so-called being retrograde, you probably might still be feeling it all the way till mid-March. So this is the timing for it. And so just to show you an image, again, with a sense of it, from our perspective on the Earth, Mars, again, not to scale, but you can just see, it looks like it's going backwards in the sign or the territory of Gemini in the sky. So Mars retrograde in Gemini. Now, one of the ways I look at Mars as an archetype is the warrior-warrioress advocate. I don't want to necessarily genderize it, but it does have a very yang quality to it. And the gift of this character in us in the world is desire and action. This one in us takes action and in the world and goes after what is wanted. It expresses desires. It also expresses anger. And it stewards your physical vitality. It really is about your life force. And how are you stewarding your life force? That's why that Mars retrograde is bringing up that question of, is something exhausting you? Now, Gemini, the sign it's moving through, remember the signs are basically energy expression of the character. Gemini, it's very curious. It likes diversity. It likes to play devil's advocate. What about this? It makes bridges. It's restless. It's mentally focused. It's quick-witted and very adaptive. Okay, so here is this warrior-warrioress advocate yang, moving very quickly in mind and ideas, and yet it's retrograde. So what are the growth opportunities, right? And I mean it sincerely, that could be there. With your life energy, What narratives and conversations and mindset patterns drain you and need to be released? And then what are you angry about? And especially, what battles are you fighting that are not yours to fight? That maybe for many of us has come up since late October. Like, wait a minute, I'm exhausting myself fighting this. Stop it. Okay. And then personal desires and agency. Agency meaning your ability to act, your ability to go forward. It's like you've probably been sorting, if you're sensitive to this energy in the last couple of months, what desires and ideas are worth going after and what are not. You have to kind of review. Remember, retrograde review. Where do I want to put my life energy? What is exhausting me? So that's really a big cycle. And even though, we come into this webinar in the beginning of the year with this retrograde cycle, and because it's about to finish in the next few days, it's even more up for us. So I wanted to review it because it's not the biggest cycle we had in 2022, but it's the most current one that we're still carrying forward. Okay, and again, keep apologizing to the folks for whom the sound is not working, and I trust the replay will be better. Now, let's go into the key astrology cycles of 2023. And I want to start with what astrologers call the planetary ingresses, okay? Planetary ingresses, that just means the planet moves from one sign to another, okay? It like enters. Ingress means enters. So it's entering into a new sign. And these are important because when a planet changes signs, it's changing its energetic expression. And sometimes that happens very quickly, like the moon changes signs every 2.5 days, basically. But other planets that are slower moving, it's a big deal when they change signs. I'll show you as an example on the next slide. So one of the most important things about 2023 is 3 out of the 10 major planetary characters that astrologers track are going into a different sign in 2023. And here they are. And that just as a big picture says this is a year where we're shifting up. We know that, but like we're really saying, wait, we got to get into a different territory. And the ones that are changing are really, really key. Okay, so coming up in the spring, early spring, us in the Northern Hemisphere, March 7th, Saturn enters Pisces, and it will stay there until February of 2026. It's roughly 2.5 years, roughly, in a sign. And it goes back and forward from the old sign to the new sign. And then on March 23rd, Pluto enters Aquarius. Now, this is the big deal. This is like the cycle of the decade, actually, and I'll say more about it. It stays formally. It doesn't leave Aquarius formally until January of 2044. Okay. So that's huge, and we'll talk more about that. And then May 16th, Jupiter enters Taurus, and will stay there till May of 2024, which Jupiter spends about a year in each sign. And so the main point, the take-home point, is that in early spring and spring in the Northern Hemisphere, we have these 3 big characters shifting into a new territory. So it's like we're ready symbolically to shift into a new territory. Now here's a little map of the solar system just to orient you, so you can see with the yellow arrows, Jupiter and Saturn kind of midway through in the solar system, and then Pluto at the very edge. I still consider Pluto a planet, most astrologers do. The deity of the underworld, the god goddess of hell. I would not be demoting them, okay? Right. So let's talk about the social planets. Astrologers divide all the planets into 3 categories, and Jupiter and Saturn are called the social planets. And they symbolize the cultural balance of expansion and contraction. So with the 2 social planets going into a different sign within, a month or so of each other, it is symbolically, as an archetypal signature, the culture is going into new territory. We know that, but we also can see the beginning of it. Those of us tracking the current political situation in the U.S., it's like the old guard really is done, and we need we're going into different territories. Some of the politicians haven't realized that. They might never catch up to what's actually happening with the people, but the people know, like, we need to go in a different territory. Okay, Jupiter and Saturn, we're going in a different territory. So Saturn is an archetype you can think of as the builder or the structure maker, and brings a gift of integrity and manifestation. Now, this one in us in the world is responsible and self-accountable. It creates clear boundaries and claims personal authority. It's really Sometimes many of you who've worked with me for a long time, and thank you, a lot of you in the house are old-time friends and allies, thank you. I'd always call Saturn the guy or the gal or the being with the clipboard. That's what the clipboard says, like, all right, let's get this figured out. So this is this character. Now it's going into Pisces, and here's its actual time, from March 7th of 2023 to May 24th of 2025. It's purely in Pisces, and then it's going to step back in to Aquarius for a little bit, and then it'll go back into Pisces. Okay, so it'll go forward to Aries and then come back. So in other words, it's in Pisces in this time period. Now, what's key about this is Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac of the 12 signs. So when a planet enters Pisces, it's actually finishing a cycle it began previously when it entered Aries. Now, in the case of Saturn, it entered Aries in April of 1996. And you might pause and do some journaling, or even now you might be bringing up in your memory banks, where was I in 1996? If I was alive, what was happening? And were there some key new phases of your life that happened? Because Saturn is all about your practical, grounded life and purpose. So for some of you, you might go, wow, I remembered 1996. There's some important things I started. And the Saturn and Pisces cycle will help you kind of review and integrate and feel through what that was about. Pisces is a very spiritual, mystical, compassionate sign. So Saturn wants us to be accountable. It's like, what's happening with your soul? What's happening with your spiritual side? And Saturn also wants us to get real. Wake up and smell the coffee. And the wounded side of Pisces is being caught in victimization, spells of disillusionment, giving over your power, like not knowing what the hell's going on. It can be really difficult. We can feel very ungrounded. And Saturn in Pisces is saying, get grounded, break those spells that are not healthy for you. And Pisces is all about interconnectedness in the oneness of all beings. So we've already got it with climate crisis and everything going on. The Saturn and Pisces cycle will definitely call on us to show up as world citizens and say, we are all interconnected. We either are going to make it together or we're going to not make it together, but we are connected, so that you'll see a lot. You're already feeling it, but you'll see it especially when Saturn goes into Pisces. So that's that big shift happening. And again, from our perspective on the earth, Pisces is the two fish swimming in opposite directions, but joined together. And so there's just an image of Saturn from our perspective going into Pisces. And then Jupiter, so that other cycle of Jupiter stepping into Taurus. And I think of Jupiter as an archetype of the teacher and the wise one. It brings the gift of expansion. It helps us expand consciousness, track deeper meanings, share unique wisdom, and question entrenched beliefs. And I'm showing you some of the imagery, the patriarchal roots, because that's important. It's inherent in the archetype. We don't want to try to deny that, but we also want to grow beyond it. So I have both Zeus, the big sky god, Jupiter, larger than life, big gas planet. Okay, mansplaining to the 9th degree. Okay, no offense to the male-oriented people, but it's like a shadow in there. Okay, then we have a wise elder, indigenous grandmother. Okay, just saying, let's have some different options here. Okay, so that's that archetype. And so Jupiter entering Taurus is in Taurus from May of 2023 to May of 2024. And a couple things that Jupiter helping us expand and grow to integrate the changes that began. Well, Jupiter was just in the first sign of Aries, beginning a new 12-year cycle. And this is the timing. You can take a look at that. What did you start in this time period? Where was that fire of Aries getting you going? Okay, Taurus is very grounding. So like, what does that mean? What am I doing with that? And then also make meaning of what are called the nodes in Taurus and Scorpio. I'll be talking about the nodes a little bit later in the webinar, but we are in this period from the beginning of 2022 till mid 2023, where the nodes, which have to do with our evolutionary purpose and letting go of the past, have been in Taurus Scorpios. So this Taurus energy of groundedness and resources and getting real is very up. And learning to steward our earth resources better, personal and collective. We know that's like the handwriting's on the wall. That has to happen. And Jupiter and Taurus will symbolically help us all grow and learn more about right relationship with resources, as well as what is true security and stability. And from our perspective on the earth, here's Jupiter entering Taurus, the bull. Again, just an image to let that come in for you that way too. Okay. Now let's also honor the transpersonal planets. Remember I said astrologers divide the planets into three groupings. The transpersonal planets are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They're the outermost planets. They move very slowly in their orbit around the sun, their orbit around us from our perspective. And they symbolize the evolutionary call beyond the personal self. Very much transpersonal, beyond. And I often give you this quote in my webinars. I'm giving it to you again because it's so good. And it's from Jessica Murray, and there's two parts to it. And you've got it in your handout. She says, mass consciousness change is an agonizingly slow process. But we can honor both the inner and the outer dimensions of life by living through the center of our charts. That is, holding steadfastly to our unique inner skill set, while accepting responsibility for living when and where we live. And she goes on to say, if we despair that the necessary social changes are so vast as to be out of reach, we remind ourselves that great leaps of collective consciousness have only ever been achieved in one way, by enough individuals being tuned into the bigger picture and willing to respond to the urgency of the times. Yeah, and that's you, my friend. Just your interest in astrology, anything. There's millions of us who are willing to respond to the urgency of these times. And astrology helps us tune into the bigger picture, because remember, you're not crazy, you're astrologically sensitive, my tagline, okay? And the astrology can help orient you and navigate you, say, right, this is the archetypal stream or currents. These are the currents we're swimming in. Okay, that helps me to know what to do. What's my next step? Okay. So Pluto, the great archetype of the underworld. I call this archetype the transformer, the revealer of the hidden. And it brings the gift of depths and potency. This one wants deep systemic change, to be real and get down to the bone, strip it down. This one in us explores all these taboos of power, sex, death, rebirth. It's a phoenix. That's why I had a phoenix image, and I'll see it again in this webinar. It is relentless as an archetype inside us and in the world, and it wants to transmute the poisons. It wants to let die what needs to die so that rebirth can happen. And it's an intense, intense archetype, and it is changing signs. Pluto enters Aquarius on March 16th of 2023, and it does not depart this sign until March 10th of 2043. Now, this is the key cycle of the decade, okay? And you can Google it. You'll hear lots of astrologers talking about it, including this one, okay? And again, from our perspective on the Earth, Pluto looks like it's leaving Capricorn, where it's been since 2008, by the way, and entering into Aquarius, the water bearer, the mythic image of a being pouring water into the heavens. Now, Aquarius is what's called an air sign, and it has the qualities of innovation and freedom, equality, rebelliousness, wants to think outside the box, egalitarianism, very focused on community and systemic change for all, okay? It is like, let your freak flag fly, okay? Aquarius has got to do something different, right? So this is, I want to give you two astrologers I love tracking. If you don't know about Astro Butterfly, go check out the web addresses in the next slide. She has a great blog. And she says, just as a summation, I liked her words, so I'm giving it to you, about what does it mean, Pluto in Aquarius? And several things she says. Pluto in Aquarius will expose what is rotten, Pluto, transmute the poisons, in our society, Aquarius, so that we can build a better structure and infrastructure for everyone here on Earth, egalitarianism, okay? It will also initially expose what is no longer working in our society. Hello, we're already there, okay? Because that's how Pluto operates. It purges what's toxic and no longer needed. She goes on to say, but this process of a complete overhaul of the very fabric of society is very much needed, and it will be totally worth the intrusive workings of Plutonic transformation. You cannot hide with Pluto, okay? It is relentless, thorough, down to the bones, okay? She says the result, a more resilient, autonomous society that can self-regulate and quickly adapt to circumstances. Let's have that prayer, that aspiration. Okay, astrobutterfly.com is one of the astrologers I like to follow. Let's talk about where Pluto has been. Capricorn, it's still there. Okay, this is a grounded earth sign of discipline, responsibility, groundedness, executive ability, being down to earth. It wants integrity, it wants to be practical. It's very connected to organizations and institutions. Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008. We all remember what started happening financially in 2008, right? And the systemic detoxing, rather, not so much detoxing, but the systemic bringing up from the basement, Pluto and Capricorn, all of the shadow material for our institutions, our organizations, our governmental structures, all the shadow that's been hiding in the United States consciousness and psyche, for example, of white supremacy. Okay? Pluto says, you cannot hide. Okay, I'm going to bring it all up because it's not integrous, Capricorn. It's not a sustainable structure, Capricorn. It's not responsible to the people, our institutions, right? Capricorn. Pluto says, here, it's not working. Okay, very relentless energy. We know 2008, since 2008, all the ways it's come up. Now it's going to go do the same thing in Aquarius, but let's get a little perspective here because Pluto moves so slowly. It does not just quickly change signs. See you, bye. Now I'm in Aquarius. No. It goes back and forth and back and forth. Are you done yet with the Capricorn learning? No, let's go back in, right? So what we have in 2023, Pluto is still in Capricorn for 9.5 months. It touches into Aquarius for 2.5 months. And then you see the next year, it shifts. Pluto is in Capricorn finishing up for 3.5 months. And then it's in Aquarius for 8.5 months. And by 2025, it's in Aquarius until 2044. So then it's fully in Aquarius. I want you to know that because the next couple of years in our year, 2023, is this back and forth experience. So I'm giving you the image of a weaving because I'll just show you, again, this is on your handout, but we have this time where you want to pay attention from mid-March to mid-June. What starts coming into your psyche? What do we see in the collective? That is about that Aquarius energy of deep radical change and egalitarianism and culture changes showing up. And then whoops, now we're going to go back into Capricorn for the rest of 2023. Okay, let's go back and look at transforming those structures. Then in 2024, most of the year, Pluto back into Aquarius. We're keep going forward with that deep change, but whoop, we're not quite done for the rest of the year almost. Let's go back into Capricorn. So it goes back and forth with this weaving. And it's pretty amazing because the sign of Aquarius has both of the structure and the freedom involved in it. And I want to give you this slide now from Kim Marie, who's a really brilliant evolutionary astrologer, if that's the school of the work of Jeffrey Green. So you can check her out at evolutionaryastrology.net. And she says this about the whole Pluto and Aquarius time period. She sees this as a 20-year transit or cycle rebelling against Capricorn themes. One of the wounded expressions of Capricorn is patriarchal distortions. Might makes right, fear-based control. We basically know what that looks like, whether you're in the US or not, right? And she reminds us that the Aquarius archetype, that sign, has both Saturn and Uranus, these two planets involved. It has to do with, so the Aquarius archetype itself, the sign has a quality of those who defend the past. This is Saturn, which is the traditional ruler of Aquarius. Every sign has its own key planet. So Aquarius has both Saturn, that clipboard character, defending the past, how we've done it. Aquarius also has the quality of those who charge forward into the future, the planet Uranus, which is the new ruler of Aquarius, this maverick energy of Uranus, okay? And then there's the quality in Aquarius where we sway back and forth in the middle between Saturn and Uranus. So what Kim Marie says is that the time of Pluto and Aquarius will ebb and flow between these three choices, and I think that's very accurate. Because the way the larger transpersonal planets work in our psyches and in the world channel, it's not like a light switch. Okay, now we've left that territory, we're going there. That's not how you evolve, right? You have to keep stripping the skins off. Oh, that box in the basement I haven't dealt with yet. Now I got to go look at it, right? So we're going to see this rhythm in the next 20 years of charging forward big progressive changes. Wait, we got to get grounded. No, we want to go back to the old ways. Okay, let's go back to normal. Okay, Supreme Court, let's keep them barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Just try it, people. Okay. And then we're going to see this back and forth, and that's normal. That's how change happens. So those of you who are super liberal and progressive, like, yeah, Aquarius is like, not so fast, people. Okay, because it's an inside job. So just saying that is something to be aware of. And I'm spending a lot of time on this one because it is such a huge astrological cycle that we're all with. Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking in the chat, Yasmin. Taking the best of both means discrimination. Absolutely. Okay, so taking a breath. Question in the chat. When was Saturn the ruler of Aquarius? Before Uranus was discovered in the 1700s, that's the traditional ruler of Aquarius, is Saturn. So Aquarius has this hidden skirt of Saturn that we don't always know about. Okay, so taking a breath, stretching your body. I will give you a formal bio break in a little bit for myself too. And again, deep respect for those of you still struggling with the sound. So sorry about that. So now let's take a breath and look at two key Jupiter cycles coming up in this year. One of them is called Jupiter conjunct Chiron in Aries at 14 degrees for those of you who know your charts. It's coming up pretty soon in about 2 months, March 12th of 2023. And Jupiter and Chiron have about a 17-year cycle with each other. It means they come together and then Jupiter goes around again and comes back again, roughly 17 years. But Aries, again, the first sign of the zodiac, we're starting a new cycle of healing and growth to expand holistic healing, body, spirit integration, deeper self-acceptance, that's Aries, and the courage to be true to yourself, that's Aries. And also the wounded side of Aries can be aggression and violence, actually. So we want to heal the dogmas, the false belief systems of aggression. By the way, that's for the collective, not just for us individually. Hello. So we have basically Jupiter and Chiron expanding beliefs and healing wounds. Let me dive into the archetype here. So remember my version, I mean, it's pretty similar to what everyone says, but I just want to own it. That Jupiter is the teacher, the wise one. So it has to do with opening up our consciousness, deeper meanings, and looking at our dogmas, questioning our entrenched beliefs, okay? And then Chiron is a beautiful being in our solar system that is not a planet. It is a shapeshifter. It is a planetoid comet, okay? Because it has an unusual orbit in our solar system, and it is called the wounded healer archetype. I also like to call it the shamanic one, being very, very clear that is about shamanic consciousness, the multi-world, the multi-revelatory capacity in our consciousness, not that we're trying to be a shaman because of the deep sensitivity to cultural appropriation and the deep shadow in the New Age community of wannabe. So we want to honor that, but I still feel very strongly that Chiron is a shamanic being, a shamanic consciousness character archetype. So it brings the gift of personal and ancestral healing. This one of us wants to explore healing your core wounds, to release patterns of what the family constellation people call blind loyalty with the ancestors, to activate a deeper shamanic consciousness, multi-world consciousness, and discover your unique healing gifts. Now, go back to blind loyalty. Chiron has a deep connection to our ancestral healing as well as our personal healing. And that's because Chiron actually orbits between Saturn and Uranus in our solar system. And Saturn is where we've come from, the known, the ancestors on some level. Uranus is the maverick, deep, radical change. So it weaves as an archetypal character of physical being in our solar system between where we've come from, the known, the established, the ancestral realm, and the radical freedom of individuation, being true to yourself of Uranus. And blind loyalty is a brilliant concept in systemic family constellations, and it's in many other psychological modalities that says many of us are psychically and empathetically sensitive to the pain of our ancestors, and we unconsciously take on their fate. We unconsciously take on their wound and suffering to try to help them. So it's a blind loyalty, but it doesn't work because they still have to karmically do their own work even if they're no longer alive, and we can't fix them. So whenever Chiron is active in a cycle, in your own chart or in a cycle in the collective, there's this opportunity to kind of look at where am I carrying something from my ancestors that's not mine to carry. And I can give it back with blessings and love, and I can focus just on what is mine to do. So this wounded healer is also about, many times the core wound we carry is our core gift. And many of us know that have been on some kind of healing journey. The more you are able to heal yourself to some extent, the more this healing presence comes out in the world. So the Jupiter Chiron cycle, a new one starting in a couple of months, really focuses us on how do I begin a new healing journey of being deeply true to myself, Aries, and in so doing become a healing presence in the world. And for some of you in the beginning of the year, you might find healing ancestral patterns is really up. And that's collectively up for all of us because we are doing it on a level systemically. If we go just look at the United States, the deep ancestral trauma of enslavement and genocidal experiences with Native peoples, and inequality and all of that is like, that's ancestral trauma that needs to be healed. We need to heal it in the physical realm and with governmental patterns, but we also have to heal it inside our souls. So that's very much present with Chiron and Jupiter from my soapbox now. So again, here's an image for you to be with Jupiter and Chiron moving together in Aries. The ram. And then Jupiter squares Pluto. That's the other Jupiter cycle I want to mention to you. So Jupiter in Taurus, once it goes into Taurus, squares Pluto in Aquarius at what we call 0 degrees at March 17th, 2023. Now, first let me talk about what that means, and then let's come back to that date. Transmute decayed beliefs and dogmas around freedom and security. Taurus is about groundedness and security, right? We talked about that earlier. Aquarius is about freedom and revolution and alternative egalitarian change. Activate wisdom to steward sustainability on systemic levels. Okay, sustainability is the resource management is Taurus, and the systemic level is Aquarius, right? Now in some astrology systems, we call this what's called a first quarter square. There's a 90-degree measurement between Jupiter and Pluto. It's called a crisis in action. It means fish are cut back. And basically, it says we can make some decisions, people. And we know this, right? We know this because of everything we're tracking. The cataclysmic weather changes, the climate crisis, the inequality with resources, money, shelter, food, the refugees, the climate refugees and so forth. And I'm not trying to say it in a downer way. I'm saying it in an uplifting way, like, here it is, okay? And we go back to March 17th. Pluto has just gone into Aquarius, and then it squares Jupiter. So for astrologers, threshold, we look at, okay, when a big change happens, who's there right with Pluto? Jupiter is. Jupiter says, I'm squaring you, Pluto, as you step into Aquarius for the next 20 years. I'm with you because I'm there at the beginning. And I'm asking, we're all being asked to do Jupiter work, to look at our core belief systems and our paradigms around security, stability. I got mine, okay, don't care about anyone else. It's like, no, Aquarius says, no, we're all in it together. So we just see this huge theme that is very much up in the collective as we walk into this energy, and is very much up in our own lives. I mean, many of us are really struggling with what is the best way to use my resources so I'm contributing, and yet I'm still taking care of myself, right? So that's there too. Thank you. Somebody in the chat just said, beware of the Ides of March. Okay. Should be May, not March, Carol. Yeah, it is a mistake. Yeah, May 17th. Okay, good. So do that correction. Thank you also for that. I still like it though. Pluto's just coming into Aquarius. Jupiter says, I'm with you, dude. Okay. Oh yeah, Trickster keeps us on our toes. So thank you. I can't remember what the next one is. Okay. Yeah, so let's just remember about Pluto. is that great transformer archetype with a gift of depth and potency. So there is that deep systemic change of our beliefs about security and stability, Jupiter and Taurus. So, and here's an image for you of Jupiter squaring Pluto and what that seemingly looks like in the sky. Okay, so now I'm going to move you into a different important session of change in the 2023 cycles, which we call a nodal axis that shifts signs. Okay, try to say that 3 times fast. Okay, so here we go. What's called the Aries Libra nodal axis, and this happens starting on July 17th of 2023 and goes till January 11th of 2025. So let me explain the nodes. These are the little symbols. When you see the little horseshoe symbol on the left of the side, that's the symbol for the north node. And the one on the right looks like a little open cup is a symbol for the south node. Now, the nodes are not planets, they're mathematical points. And they represent an evolutionary journey that we're all on. The south node is seen as connected to our past and what we've learned how to do really well are old survival strategies. And I want to say I always say, it's not there's anything wrong with the south node. We've survived because of these strategies or these energies, but it's a rut. It gets us caught and we don't move forward. Whereas the north node is opposite point mathematically in the zodiac, is where our cutting edge work is, our evolutionary call. It's like, oh, let me grow into that. So what happens with the nodes is they're opposite each other, they're points symbolically in the zodiac wheel, and they move backwards through the zodiac wheel, and they're paired with each other. And they stay in one set of opposite signs for 18 months roughly. So we have these 18-month periods of having these evolutionary changes. Now we're still in the evolutionary change in January 2023 of the nodal axis being in Taurus and Scorpio. Okay. And that's a really different energy than Aries Libra, because the North Node in Taurus right now has been asking last year to really look at true security and stability. And the South Node in Scorpio has challenged us to recognize the survival strategies of Scorpio that don't work for us, which is essentially trauma drama and getting caught in highs and lows and fighting to the death of it and maintaining resentment and really just basically getting ourselves emotionally twisted up and not letting go of stuff. And Taurus says, wait, learn to let go of it and just get grounded and say what's really worth your life energy. That's something we've been wrestling with for the last year. Now in the summer, we'll be shifting, and Aries and Libra will now become our journey for 18 months. And the North Node in Aries wants to ask us to have self-acceptance and courage to go in new directions. Aries is very pioneering. It says, oh, I can do this. Let's try it. Let's go. The old patterns are South Node Libra, the survival strategies. Again, nothing wrong with Libra, but it means we have had some coping mechanisms, is another way to call it, in relationships. Libra is very much about relationships. Aries is about being true to yourself. And the relationship patterns in Libra that are worn out are the people pleasing. What do you want, dear? And patterns of lack of reciprocity, unfairness. Libra wants fairness, but when it's a South Node, sometimes we put up with unfairness and just, okay, you know. And sometimes the deep challenge of Libra is you can't make a decision. You kind of waffle back and forth. Again, all of these are survival strategies, but in the coming time period of the nodal axis being in Aries and Libra, we're really asking ourselves, the world is asking us to change that up and have more courage to take action and not get caught in old relationship patterns. Yeah, there's lots of coyotes in the chat. Okay, so there's that. Now, taking a breath, let's go into some key retrograde cycles, okay, because there's several. And they are part, again, these big cycles of time out. And they show up with the personal planets, okay? They also show up with the other planets, but something I want to really call your attention to for this coming year is the personal planets, first of all, are another grouping that astrologers work with the 10 planets, and they are the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, the closest into the sun. Okay, and we do think of the sun as a planet, but we know it's actually the center of our solar system. And these are all symbolic of our personal self. I'm not going to give you all the images on them, but essentially, like the moon is the deep, emotional, instinctive nurturer. It's our feeling level. Venus is our relational self. Mars, as you've seen, and Mercury is our communicator self, and how we think and speak and express ourselves. And Mars is our yang taking action, as we talked about. Well, the interesting thing about 2023 is we begin it with Mars still retrograde, one of the personal planets. The middle of the year, Venus is retrograde, personal planet with relationships. And throughout the year, we have four, count them, four Mercury retrograde cycles, the communicator. So if we just lens back and look at it, we recognize that not every year has both a Venus retrograde and a Mars retrograde. And not every year has 3.5 Mercury retrograde cycles. They're like, oh, okay, what does that mean, Sheila? Well, taking a breath, opening up to a greater consciousness and realize, okay, this makes sense. Our personal self needs a huge timeout on all these areas of life. We start the year with a timeout with our yang energy. What am I angry about? What am I angry about? What battles am I done fighting? Like, we start with that, finishing up Mars retrograde. Middle of the year, Venus retrograde is asking us, I'll say a little bit more about this, but what's really happening in my relationships and what needs to really deeply change around my values and my self-worth and my resources and my partnerships, my relationships. And then sprinkled throughout for good measure, for change, Mercury periodically says, yeah, and I want you to take a look at this differently. Okay, so just, we already know that we're in profoundly initiatory times, the cauldron of transformation. The heat is on full rolling boil. We know that, we can feel it. And what it demands is a dismemberment of the old identity. And the personal planets are ways that we connect with that. So these retrograde cycles that I'm going to review with you now, you can do the normal thing and say, oh no, here it comes. Like I can do the normal thinking with Mercury retrograde. It's like, I'm actually going to be able to do this webinar today, people. I don't know. Okay. That's normal. Okay. Let's breathe and laugh about that. But the deeper currents of it is like, right, my own personal life, my own personal identity needs a huge review, because that's part of how I contribute to the initiation of the planet right now, is that I do my work of pausing and looking within and changing and telling the truth to myself. Those are all present there. Yeah. Okay. So just a reminder, with retrograde cycles of planets, that is when a planet appears to move backwards in the orbit around us. It's not really doing that. But the main thing is the timeout period for the planet involved, the character involved. Review the R words, a prescription, the shorthand for retrograde is a prescription symbol. It's a prescription for timeout to review, reassess, and redefine. So let's honor Venus retrograde. Again, this is in your handout. Venus retrograde in Leo, and it goes retrograde between 28 and 12 degrees of Leo, for those of you who know how to put that in your chart and work with it. Its formal time of retrograde is July 22nd till September 3rd. And its sensitivity zone, again, or sometimes it's called its shadow phase. If you are sensitive, you'll feel it coming by summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, June 21st. And you'll still feel it all the way till early October, right? So really, it's like a 3.5 month cycle. And again, it's a review with Venus issues. So the key themes with Venus retrograde are, sometimes the shorthand, you see it in your handout, love, money, and values. It's a shorthand we use in Venus land. Relationships, your inner relationships with your inner figures, your outer relationships with humans, animals, nature, spirits. Acknowledge and shift old patterns that don't work. That's the key thing. It's Venus retrograde timeout. What is happening in my relationships? Okay, what's happening here? Second of all, resources. Good stewardship with resources. And a main question that you can bring up in Venus retrograde is, what's the price I'm paying Okay, what's draining? What needs to stop or go? And the price you're paying, as you know, when I say it, is not just things like money. It's time, it's emotional energy, it's, all kinds of things. And then the third key theme for Venus retrograde is around self-worth and values. What's really going on? Am I living my values? Am I working with my essential needs? How's my self-worth? Those are all themes that are just always present with the Venus retrograde theme. And that will happen. Well, she's in Leo. I'm genderizing her, but the planet's in Leo, the lion. And the sign of Leo, it's called a fire sign, and it's very much about sovereignty and creativity and self-respect and shining your gifts and being visible. So when there's a retrograde planet in Leo, those parts of ourself come up, those themes of us come up. So Venus, let's talk about the archetype. I call her the lover or the relational one. And this one brings us the gift of relationality and attunement to core values. It really helps you express who you are and what you love in relationships. Again, relationships don't have to be with humans, okay? This one of you follows your heart, receives and gives pleasure, and loves yourself. And love on so many levels. The classic Venus, Aphrodite, Venus on the half shell. You put a chatty, many images of goddess and beauty and Venus, and also relationships of all kinds. Okay, Venus. Now, here's some of the growth opportunities for Venus and Leo. And again, you have this in your handout. With relationships, what old patterns of being someone's cheerleader do you need to release? And this comes from sometimes with Leo, when characters are in Leo, we learn to play to the audience. And Leo is so much about honoring and blessing and upholding and witnessing that sometimes we get caught in a pattern of being someone's cheerleader. I will see you. I will affirm you, because you can't do it yourself or you're in a really hard place. That's a gift of love, but at a certain point is you have to stop it because you realize, ooh, this is not working. I'm not taking care of myself, right? And then resource stewardship. Where is it costing you too much to seek external approval and validation, right? And that the deep challenge of Leo, because it's about being visible, it gets tied and enculturated and trained up to say, well, I have value because someone else sees me and approves of me. Let's talk social media, shall we, people? How many likes have you had? Okay, it's like that's set up in the culture. I'm of value because I have 50 likes on that post I just did. I mean, so where did we get that from? But on a deeper level is also because it's retrograde in Leo, what am I doing with how am I being with my creativity? And what's alive in me, what's on fire, where I want to share and express it, and am I not doing it and not punishing myself, but let me look at that. What would allow me to be visible if I want to be visible? What resources do I have in me? What's wasting my time that I'm not doing what I really want to be doing or expressing what I want to be expressing? And then also around values and self-worth, claiming your own sovereignty and creativity. Really taking your seat. And it's not from the wounded side of Leo, which is often wounded narcissism and a desperate need to be seen and loved and witnessed, but from that deep, grounded sovereignty of Leo. I respect myself. I respect who I am, and I want to value that. So those are some of the things you might see in this summertime in the Northern Hemisphere. And I thank you. One of our people in the chat just said that while Venus is retrograde in Leo, it will be deeply connected to the sun. It's called conjunct the sun, which the sun is really about our conscious self and our sense of purpose and going forward in our lives. So we may see some real rich opportunities for growth with that in the summer, in the July time period. Now, taking a breath, we're going to talk about Mercury retrograde. I've been giving you Exhibit A in the beginning of this webinar. It's like, this is what Mercury retrograde can look like with communication processes and technology. Okay. And it's like, it happens, right? So Mercury's areas of life are about communication, ideas, and the stories you share and tell yourself. Now, the opportunities in 2023 with all the Mercury retrograde cycles are really to look at, track what stories are done and stop telling them. It's like that narrative's done. And because most of the time the Mercury retrograde cycles in 2023 are in earth signs, which are very grounded, we're going to be looking at practical and functional communication. Wait a minute. What does that mean? Okay, is it really working? And then very much there's an opportunity to shift outworn attitudes and mindsets that are too small. That's always an opportunity with Mercury retrograde because it has to do with our mind. And some of the stories we tell ourselves is just like, where have I outgrown? And stop carrying that. It's like easier said than done, but let's just let go of it, right? So again, just a reminder, the retrograde cycles of planets, we do a review around Mercury issues in this case, which is very much communication. Yes, experiential astrology in action. I hope you're all laughing. Oh, thanks. Yep. Perseverance. Yeah, I do. That's for my sun sign in Capricorn helps. Okay, let's talk about Mercury retrograde, shall we? Do I really need to say anything, people? Okay. So, Mercury retrograde in earth signs. Imagine that. Okay. The last one has a little earth and fire in there. Okay. So we're going to review them. And again, you have the handout. The first one you're right with right now. We're in the midst of it. And the other ones you go, yeah. But come April, you might pull out your handout notes and what was she talking about there? Okay. Or you'll be listening to my weekly podcast. All right. So the first one, which is in we're now, but let me just give you this slide picture is basically the four of them. The one we're in right now, which started at the end of the year and goes to January 18th. Then there's one in the Northern Hemisphere spring, April 21 to the 14th. We'll go over each of them. Then there's one in the late summer, August to September. And then at the end of the year, we get one just in time for the holidays. And then boom, it finishes as the new year starts. Yeah, very good. Okay, so let's go into each of them. So one way of looking at Mercury, again, this is just from my filter, the communicator, the messenger, it brings us the gift of expression. This one receives and processes information, analyzes and discerns, makes bridges, and is open to change and diversity. So again, you can see one image here on the left that's showing up on your screen, the Greek version, Mercury, messenger god. There's also the rainbow goddess, and then there's writing and communicating, all these Mercury things. Yep. So the first one, Mercury retrograde cycle in Capricorn, is started at 24 degrees and goes back to 8 degrees Capricorn. So those, again, that know how to work with this, put it in your chart, see what it's activating. Formally from December 29th of last year till January 18th. It's coming, people. Sensitivity zone, again, when you might feel it before and after. I used to always say, and I still do, the sensitivity zone or the shadow phase, it's when the issues hit the fan. Might have been showing up since December 13th of last year, and you'll continue to linger with them through February 7th, which is not to imply that February 7th you've got it all figured out. Yeah, really, I might read, someone just said, I might redo this webinar. I might do it on January 19th. Take two, all right. So here's the opportunity. So Capricorn, remember, is an earth sign of groundedness, pragmatic energy. It's very much an executive function, and it wants things to work. It wants to be purposeful. Now, the deep wounded side of Capricorn is when we have fear-based control. Oh, it's not working. I wanted to get it, and it can be very much a wounded authority over, like I'm going to try to control it. So some of the retrograde growth opportunities, you may have been looking at this since the end of the year. Any places where you feel caught in fear-based control, either your own or someone else's, or you're struggling with the authority question. Do I have the authority to do this? Or you're projecting someone else knows more than me, that kind of thing. The basic gift of this Mercury retrograde cycle is to have this empowered ability to be the executive of your own life. The buck stops here. Speak your truths and release the circuses that are not yours. You know what I'm referring? I love that little mantra from our culture. Not my monkeys, not my circus. Okay. And some of times in Mercury's retrograde in Capricorn, you get really clear. These are not my monkeys. Okay. Someone else has to clean them, their cage, or feed them, or whatever. Not my monkeys, not my circus. So if that has been happening, really get clear about that. And when Mercury goes forward later on in this month, you might say, believe these monkeys are yours, or you just energetically give them back. Okay. Yeah, and someone just put the in the chat. Yeah, sometimes the shadow phase or the sensitivity zone is more challenging. I appreciate that comment, because when I say the issues hit the fan, sometimes the date of the sensitivity zone where it's coming up for you before the actual retrograde is because your psyche's not ready for it yet. So you're like, where did that come from, right? By the time you get to the actual time when the planet appears to go backwards, it's like you're kind of warmed up, your psyche's like, right. But sometimes those sensitivity zones are quite strong. So I appreciate you saying that. So that's the one we're in right now, and hopefully you are getting some time out, or you're gonna have some humor. Here, let me model it for you. Like, I am being recorded, so I didn't say what was actually going on inside my say. I said, no, Sheila, you do enough cussing in your other places, don't put it on the webinar. Okay. But you might have been in this. Is it going to work? It's earth sign, right? Capricorn. So then there's the other one, the next one coming up, which is the second retrograde cycle in Taurus, the earth sign of grounded, security, stability, resource management. It's from 15 degrees to 5 degrees of Taurus, where it seems to go backwards in the zodiac wheel. Here's the date, April 21st to May 14th. And then your sensitivity zone, early April to early June. So remember, Taurus is about security and stability. So what are those old stories? And again, this is in your handout. But one of the major things I find when Mercury's retrograde in Taurus is, what's costing me too much? It's like Taurus is a bit energetically, and I mean this respectfully, like a good accountant in your psyche. We're running in the red, okay? Like, we can't keep spending this energy, time, money, presence. It's not working. And then also, wounded Taurus gets really freaked out about scarcity. I'm not going to survive. And so it gets into core, like, survival fears, and certainly what's happening in our collective initiatory crisis, very deep global crisis. All of us, to some extent, are working with survival fears. And any of you who resonate with past life energy, many of us are remembering unconsciously past life trauma of survival. So it's very stacked right now. What you get the opportunity to do with this retrograde cycle with Mercury is get grounded and make resources for yourself and others more sustainably shared. Now, that's partly coming because at this point, Pluto is in Aquarius. So it's beginning to open the door to the new changes of, we're in this together, people, remember? So what you might find in this retrograde cycle in Taurus is both a personal looking at, what am I doing with my resources? How do I get more grounded? What are the old narratives of survival fears I need to address and shift? Embedded in the bigger cultural basket of, we're all wrestling with, we have to manage resources differently if we're all going to survive. So it's got both the collective and the personal in there very strongly. So that's what you could look for. And hopefully knowing this empowers you to lean in and say, right, it's the Taurus work, okay? Hopefully. And then the third one in the earth sign of Virgo, between 21 degrees and 8 degrees, the Mercury retrograde cycle, from August 23rd to September 15th. Your sensitivity zone, early August to late September. And I'll come back to that question that just came up. So the opportunities, Virgo is a beautiful earth sign of healing. And I would say Virgo has the ability to break things down to see what's not working and put it back together. Any of you who carry Virgo strong in your being, or you have a resonance with it, you can know instantly what's not working, what's off. And you go, well, if we just do this and bring it into alignment, everything works. Now, in a healing way, that's an incredible ability to bring things into wholeness. When it's in its wounded side, it becomes critical and perfectionistic. And it wants to rescue or fix something. Yeah, this is wrong, we got to fix it, so it gets in that kind of wounded Virgo energy. So what you can look at in this Mercury retrograde cycle in Virgo is, what are my old stories about having to heal or fix something? or my work. What's my work to do? So this is a really good Mercury retrograde cycle to address a rescue operation and just go, stop it. Okay. Like, no, I don't need to fix that. Okay. Where Capricorn says, not my monkeys, Virgo says, I don't have to fix it. Okay. That's not me. Okay. And also watch out for compassionately the self-criticism and the perfectionism. I got to get it right. I got to be perfect. It's like that's very wounded narrative that wants a timeout in this thing. So really, it's about shifting to compassion, humility, and self-acceptance, and really help yourself discern congruent service, health, and work. Health comes in here too, because Virgo's deeply connected to health, because if something's off, sometimes when we're sick or unhealthy, there's something off in our system that needs to be realigned, whether it is a individual, self-alignment, or we need medicine, or we need surgery. So it's about health and on lots of levels. So what is really more healthy for me and for our world? Because remember, this is also the collective that is having these Mercury retrograde cycles. So what are those old narratives and stories that I've outgrown, that the world's outgrown, that's not really helping? Let go of them. Okay, so that's Mercury retrograde in Virgo. And then I want to go back to the question in the chat. Do we get grounded during the retrograde time or after it releases and heads direct? I think both. Sometimes, and this is referencing the Taurus one, but it also can work with any of the Earth retrogrades. For some folks, when you're in the retrograde phase, you basically get the signals, this is not working, whatever that is, and I need to change it. Some people implement the change. It works for them to implement the change during the retrograde. Sometimes it's natural. Okay, the retrograde's done, and we kind of look and say, what the hell was that about? And what did I learn from it? Okay, this is where I want to do it, right? So you may find, in the Taurus retrograde cycle with Mercury, that's you get grounded during, or you're after the fact looking at, okay, this is what I want to do. Okay, and thank you. I was gonna do Q&A at the end, but I like how these questions are popping in, so I'm just gonna address them. Great question. How to balance not my monkeys and I don't care about anybody but me and mine. What a great question. I think you'd have to figure it out for yourself, but I think one of the major things you want to look at is what part of you is trying to deal with the monkeys. Is it the one of you who is in fear-based control, Capricorn? Is it the one of you thinking they don't know how to do it well, I'm going to do it for them, I know better? Like who is the one in you trying to take care of someone else's monkeys? Because if you find compassionately it's a wounded inner figure who's desperately trying to fix everything, then you want to just bless that one of you and say, those are actually not mine to deal with. Because rather than be, your question is really astute, because we don't want to go to the extreme of, forget everyone else, I'm just going to do my thing and I'm not going to care. Then we're into another wounded figures. So we want to actually get underneath our wounded figures. I'm not putting this on you, dear, who asked the question. It's just your question is great for this. Is our wounded figures can go into the extreme of over service, burden, responsibility, or I don't care, I'm just getting what I want. None of those are effective, sustainable points of view. We want to get underneath in our heart and wholeness to recognize either of those extremes is a wounded one and needs love. So that if you say it's not my monkeys, not my circus, it's coming from your wholeness. So I hope that helps. It's a great question. Thank you. Okay, but then there's a special bonus prize from Mercury in 2023. We get the beginning of a fourth Mercury retrograde cycle. Usually there's only 3 per year. And when we get to the third one in December, like, phew, made it through another year. Mercury says, but wait, there's more. I ain't done with you. Okay, this one, and this is one that crosses the line. Okay, so this Mercury retrograde cycle is in Capricorn and Sagittarius, meaning Mercury starts in Capricorn and then looks like it goes backwards into Sagittarius. So it starts at 8 degrees Capricorn and goes back and ends at 22 degrees of Sagittarius and then goes forward. So it's weaving those two signs together. It starts December 13th of this year and ends at the beginning of next year. Your sensitivity zone is November 26th to January 21st. And I'm smiling and laughing because any of us who live in the United States, late November is Thanksgiving, the holidays with family and everything. And then we still go through the Christmas and Kwanzaa and all the family, Hanukkah holidays. And then we go into the first 3 weeks of January of next year. So this is an end of the year special gift from Mercury. So what's happening is, I talked about the earth sign of Capricorn, grounded, productive, executive structures. Sagittarius is a fire sign. That's about aiming to grow and expand and adventure and learn. It's, the image is a centaur aiming an arrow into the heavens. And Sagittarius is very much about expanding and making meaning, and also exploring. Its wounded side is a dogmatic position of I know best. It's a teacher with a capital T, like, hey, I got it. This is mine. Is my truth is the truth. Okay. So remember that Mercury retrograde wants a time out with our narratives to stop and think about it. So I'm giving you here growth opportunities. They might be gross opportunities. Okay. It's in the handout. Where are you caught in fear-based control? If you are, because that's one expression of a wounded Capricorn narrative. Where are you disconnected for your core beliefs? Because Sagittarius, in its healthy expression in us, is that we're aligned with our truths. And we know how difficult that is when we feel like we're not walking our talk, or we're dissonant with what we really believe in. So those are some of the themes that might come up. And what you can do is work with an empowered ability to attune with your beliefs and aspirations, to feel in alignment with what do I really believe in? And from there, decide what's actually mine to do. So this Mercury retrograde cycle helps you blend the two together. Like, before I take action and make commitments to being responsible, Capricorn, let me check in with my deeper truths. Okay, from here, this is where I'm going to go forward. Yeah. Okay, now, great. Another question. Your timing is fabulous. Look at that question in the chat. I see the monkeys in the circus of needing to set energetic boundaries. How can I love both you and myself? Where is that line? Beautifully said. Okay? Because you're holding up wholeness. How can I love both, but not take the bait of doing rescue operations or babysitting monkeys that are not yours to babysit? Okay, can we talk? Okay. All right, taking a breath. So we're almost done. I'm almost done. In case you haven't noticed, there's a few more things I want to do, including giving you some resources and inviting you to my course, my roadmap course. However, let's take a breath. And this is something I've been talking about, most astrologers have been talking about for a while. And I want to remind you and give you context for those of us living in the US, being Americans, or relating to the United States as a being, as an archetypal being on the planet, is this huge initiation cauldron that the country itself is in. Okay. Now, everything that is born has an astrological birth chart, a natal chart. Most of us work with our personal one, but many astrologers also work with charts of countries or charts of movements. And the United States has a chart. Now, there's controversy about what the actual birth time is, and there's some great research being done. With that, I'll refer you back to Kim Marie, her most recent forecast for 2023. She talks about the United States chart that she uses from Michaelman Casey, a Seattle astrologer. But that's too much detail for this general webinar. But I want to say is, we have a chart for the US. We don't need to know the exact time, because these two cycles I'm going to talk about have to do with doesn't matter what time of day the United States was born on July 4th, 1776. These cycles are operative. And they're called Neptune opposed Neptune. Formally, mathematically, May of 2021 till December of 2022. And the Pluto return, February of 2022 until December of 2022. Now, given that data, these are such huge archetypal cycles that we feel it a couple years coming and a couple years going. So I want to remind you about this as a context for your individual transformational energies. So Neptune as an archetype, you can see it as the dreamer or the visionary. It brings the gift of vision and connection to alternate realities. It's the great oceanic deity. Neptune or Poseidon. Okay. This one connects to visions, imagination, and the mystical side, and explores illusions and the call to transcend ordinary reality. It wants to go into altered states. Now, healthy altered states are incredible. Things like prayer, mysticism, an artist writing or sculpting or painting, the muse dancing with you, having a revelatory experience, having a union experience with something. Unhealthy altered state, unhealthy Neptune, is things where we go under the spell. We lose ourselves. We get taken over by energies. We enmesh. We feel our egos dissolving. Neptune, remember, is a transpersonal planet. So its whole purpose is to go beneath or underneath or beyond the transpersonal and beyond the personal. So it's a dissolving. That's where that image is coming from. That archetype. And what's been happening, yeah, right, exactly, conspiracy theories, okay, is Neptune opposes Neptune. It means for the chart of the United States, the planet Neptune is opposite in the heavens where it was when the country was born. And on a collective level, the need to dissolve self-deception, release false dreams and addictions, and revision our identity. And again, thank you for that in the chat. Conspiracy theory, anyone? Oh no, I won the election. Okay, it's like how many versions of false media and stories can we do? And yet, to lens back and recognize what Neptune cycles are asking of us is to dissolve and break the spells of identities and experiences that are too small for our soul. And Neptune in the United States chart was in the sign of Virgo, which again is an earth sign of healing and wants to bring things into wholeness. So this cycle the country's been under, and any of us connected to the country's been with, is what are my false stories and false dreams and my addiction to be right and to get it right, and it's this way and this is how we fix it, right? We're just learning to let go of that. We have to revision our identity, right? So and the incredible suffering we've all gone through on so many levels of this Neptunian spell and fog of like, I don't know what's real and what's not real. It's not that we know what it is now, but we have come through this extraordinary initiation of altered state that for many of us has felt very painful and unhealthy. And then we have Pluto again, this transformer, revealer of the hidden, this underworld deity, this deity of the underworld, God, goddess, being of hell. Come on down, strip down. And again, Pluto's expertise is the basement work. What's under the rug? What's in that back box in your basement that you haven't looked at? Let's take the lid off. What's here? Transmute the poisons. Okay, so the Pluto return for the country, it's a very rare cycle. Pluto takes about 248 years to go around the zodiac once. So in a cycle with a birth chart like the country, it's the planet returning to where it was when you're born. And formally by the mathematics, it's February to December of 2022. But of course, on a energetic level, we've been feeling it really many ways since Pluto stepped into Capricorn 2008, which is where Pluto is in the United States chart, and we'll still be working with it for a lot more. But on a collective level, it's the need to take the identity down to the bones, to address the basement shadow issues around power, violence, and manipulation, all in service to affecting regeneration. Because remember, Pluto is that death rebirth, it's that phoenix energy. And I and many astrologers or many, journalists and philosophers had talked about what's been happening in the United States' psyche with the Black Lives Matters, with Native rights, with economic injustice, with Me Too. All of the shadow issues in the country's psyche of white supremacy, of gun violence, of misogyny, of genocidal war, horrors done with Native peoples, of enslavement, of black-bodied peoples, of any person of culture, It's like all, and it's Pluto cycles are a loss of innocence. You cannot deny a deeper truth. You know, Pluto basically says, cut the bullshit. This is what's so. Here's the truth. What are you going to do about it? Right? Incredible initiation, incredibly painful, and incredibly possibly empowering. Because with a Pluto cycle, if we have the courage to turn and face the truth and make systemic changes, there is this regeneration, this empowerment of regeneration. And that's a hope I have for the country and for any of us connected to this country. So the Pluto return. So I want to invite us. I did this last year. I want to keep inviting us to do this. Our personal work supports the country's work, okay? Whether you're American or you're connected to it or not, okay? So track yourself where you need to dissolve self-deception, release false dreams and addictions, and revision your identity. Where's your own conspiracy theories? Okay, it's like lean in and pop those bubbles. Wait. No. What is my deeper truth? What's going on here? What do I really have faith in, right? And the same thing with the United States, Pluto return. We are part of, if we have any connection to the country at all, the United States, we've been doing our basement work, okay? Track where you need to take your identity down to the bones. Address your basement shadow issues around power, violence, and manipulation for the sake of self-regeneration. And saying that, I want to be very compassionate here, but power doesn't have to mean power over. It's where you disempower yourself. Where do you give your power away to somebody else, right? Violence doesn't have to be you doing an act of violence. Some of the narratives we carry are violent towards ourselves, right? And really nasty and harsh. It's like, whoo, can I shift that? Wow. Manipulation, all of our little survival strategies of people pleasing or people management, or how do I make sure I don't, get marginalized here? I mean, all of these little ways Pluto says, here they are. Okay. So I'm laughing, but I'm like also like everyone else, you know, I'm in the stew, and the meat hasn't fully come off the bones yet, but it's like in that big stew. So our own courage, our own compassion to do our own Pluto work contributes to what's happening on a mass psyche level. So just saying, right? Okay, let's take a breath. And I appreciate so much the questions that have been coming in, and I want to just pause here. And again, if you need to stretch or something, I want to be with any questions in the chat that come up, and I do also want to give you a guided journey. So I'll just notice if there's, maybe take a couple questions, and then we'll go into the guided journey and come back to questions. So here's a great one. When a planet moves into a sign and it correlates to what that planet is in your natal chart, does that mean anything specific for the individual? Absolutely. So for example, if say you have a planet in Jupiter, you have Jupiter in Taurus, and Jupiter is just about to go into Taurus, I think I'm understanding your question correctly, then it means you're coming home to yourself. It's particularly strong for you because this is natal to you. So you might find a heightened sense of, wow, I am really working deeply with a core part of myself in this. And so you might really lean in. Thank you. Okay, question about ancestral wounds. I feel I'm not responsible for them. However, I do feel that when I feel and heal wounds that resonate with ancestral wounds, I do send healing energy to them. And I do help them heal. Absolutely. What's my take on that? I totally agree with you. Sometimes you don't have a sense of, oh, my ancestors struggled with the same thing I did. That's, fine. But when you courageously do your own healing work, what I think you're saying is that you can offer up like a blessing or a prayer to say, I'm doing my own healing work, and this helps the ancestors. And I totally agree with that, because there's a certain quality of timelessness with the ancestors and the descendants, and that sense more of a quantum consciousness, that something you do now in everyday reality and inner reality shifts the energy for the descendants and the ancestors. What is the shadow cycle of Pluto return? What a great question. I don't know that offhand, but what most astrologers work with is about what's called a 5-degree aspect with a cycle. So I'd have to go back and look at when Pluto was 5 degrees away from its exact return to the US and 5 degrees after. My gut says a couple of years on either side, but I don't know that data, but perhaps you could look it up, or someone in the audience who's an astrologer might be looking up 5-degree orb for the exact Pluto return for the US, which I think is 27 plus Capricorn. So there's a little astrobabble for you. Okay, got it. So the earlier question, Saturn going into Pisces, when you have Saturn Pisces in your own chart, yes. So you might find that 2.5 years of Saturn in Pisces, because you carry Saturn in Pisces in your own chart, to be particularly poignant for that. Okay, and somebody's calling out A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle is so good to work with the shadows of ego and what we all are going through collectively in person. Thank you for that. Right. And then around ancestral wounds, I feel there's a possibility to change family karma. Your thoughts, Sheila? Absolutely. I do believe you bring to my heart Angela Sarian, wonderful spiritual teacher. Some of us have had the connection with her. And she would say, invite us to recognize when an old family pattern was up, and to say, that's a story that doesn't have to happen, and would say, let me align with the good, true, and beautiful of my ancestors or my family lineage. And that sense, I remember her because to me, there is that shifting of family karma. When a descendant makes a choice, a different choice than perhaps one that caused harm or pain, it changes the karma of the family, I believe. So thank you for that. Yes, and thank you. Someone's pointing out the Revolutionary War preceded the U.S. birth. And actually, that is, part of, if you go back and look at the astrology of the U.S., and again, Kim Maria talks a bit about this in her 2023 forecast, is that the U.S. we had the Revolutionary War, declared independence, and then still fought. So it's not like you're born and it's fine. The country was still involved in all these struggles with who are we and what is really freedom and so forth. So there's that whole Pluto return brings all of that back in the country's psyche. Okay, I do want to give those of you who want to have a guided journey an opportunity for that. So it's at the end more of our webinar. And then you can stay on if you're interested in my upcoming Transformation Journey Roadmap. I'm opening that up again, and it's an incredible do-it-yourself course with a little help from me to work with empowering yourself. Okay, big love to everybody who's stepping away. But now we're going to go into the guided journey. So it's a way to attune with the archetypal opportunities of 2023, and it is a guided journey to Pluto, because guess what? Who is the center of the room here, people, for 2023 and beyond? And what I mean by a guided journey or a guided imagery process is, if you haven't done a journey, guided meditation, I doubt that's so but some of you might be so. It's just really simple, and I'm going to lead you in a guided journey. If it's choice-based, so if you don't want to do it, if you want to step away from the webinar now or catch it on the replay, you can. But to really make it more of a deeper connection to the archetype of Pluto, not just the information, that's beautiful, but let's go into a deeper connection where Pluto is an ally for you. Okay. There you go. And also you can go look at, someone looked up the shadow phase for the Pluto return for the United States. January 2015 to January 2028. Thank you. Or January 2005. Okay. So letting that go. And if you're going to go on the journey with me, I invite you to get really comfortable. You can be sitting, you can be standing, you can be lying down. As long as you can hear me, would be really good. Okay. So begin first with just relaxing your body. And you can stretch. You can take a couple of deep breaths and just trust yourself. This will be a journey into connecting with Pluto as an ally of transformation for you. And whatever is going to happen, I'm trusting is the just right thing for you to have happen. And trust yourself by setting this intention. Whatever will occur will support you. So begin with a gentle breathing in and out. And invite you, if it's congruent, to bring your hand to your heart, or energetically bring your energy to your heart. Gently close your eyes if you're willing. And just bring to your heart an awareness of where you know you'd like some help for change or transformation. Your head doesn't have to figure this out. Your heart knows. Some place in your life. Just gently breathe and ask your heart, where would I like some help to make changes? Just breathe. And again, if your mind wants to get in there and give you all kinds of ideas, just gently blow it a kiss and just ask your heart, where do I want to get some support to make changes in my life? And then whatever came, just symbolically tuck it in your back pocket. Okay, you can move your hand to sort of put it in your back pocket, whether you have one or not, or you can just drop your hand. You've set your intention. And then if your eyes are open, close them again. Take a nice deep breath in. And as you exhale, imagine going through your heart and coming to a place in nature that has change going on in some way that's congruent for you. And as I say that, with your eyes closed, you may see something or you may not. You may have a perception of a place in nature, a kinesthetic connection, or nothing at all. Whatever's going on, just trust it. It's a landscape of change that is congruent for you. Might be weather happening, might be the edge of the sea, might be sunrise coming up and a change of the light coming into the world, or none of these things, just a landscape in nature of change. With your eyes closed, just take it in. You might see something, smell something, kinesthetically feel something. Just trusting yourself. Let yourself be in this landscape of change that's supportive for you. And then you notice that there is this ally coming towards you. It's a version of Pluto that's showing up just the way this one needs to show up. It need not be human. It might come as an energy or light or an animal or a presence. And this one is coming as your ally. And yes, it's Pluto, the depth, the need to change, and it's coming as an ally for you. And just notice how it's showing up, and if you feel comfortable and okay with Pluto coming closer to you in this way, if you don't, say no thank me, no thank you. If you do, allow Pluto to approach you to the just right place for you. Just notice how this one is showing up, uniquely for you in this moment. And if it feels congruent, you can either bring out of your back pocket or remember in your heart what you set your intention about, where you'd like support for change. And let Pluto know, I want some support to make changes here. And then just allow whatever's going to happen to happen. Could even say to Pluto in some way, what needs to happen between us right now with this intention? And then trust. And anytime the journey doesn't feel right, stop it, open your eyes, and come back. Otherwise, just let whatever's going to happen with you and Pluto happen. Just keep breathing, being open. Pluto as an ally for your transformation right now. And if you need to, you can be having a conversation with Pluto, with his ally, if you need to ask for clarification, or you can just be whatever way is supportive for you. And now Pluto knows you know, begin to complete this journey for now. You can always go back to this place in your imagery of this place in nature and reconnect to Pluto as this particular ally for you. But let this journey, this process with Pluto begin to complete. If you went on a journey with Pluto, come back to the place in nature where you began, this place of change and support. And take a moment to thank Pluto as an ally, recognizing this one can show up for you when you need it. And then just notice Pluto as an ally going wherever that one needs to go. Thanking the nature landscape that's supported you. And thanking yourself. And then take a nice deep breath in slowly. As you exhale, imagine coming back through your heart to return to where you started, bringing with you whatever occurred for you in your journey. When you're ready, open your eyes and come back. And take some time to make notes or reflect for a couple minutes on what happened for you with your journey. I'll call you back in a couple of minutes and we'll finish the webinar. Someone asked about, there's no stupid questions, by the way, but if the Revolutionary War is connected to the USA birth, is there a shadow side of USA birth date or on our own so we can ID influences or not? The birth date is the birth date, and then the cycles are what we look at as we understand the evolution of an individual or a country. What cycles are they going through? So that's what you do. Okay. Here's a great quote to finish from Deepak Chopra. Awakening is not changing who you are, but discarding who you are not. Okay, it's a great Pluto quote, actually. Okay, here we go. And we're all on and in this initiatory journey together. Yes. I just found this quote again. I don't have it for you exact from McLuhan, Marshall McLuhan. There's no passengers on planet Earth, spaceship Earth. We're all crew. Thanks for doing your part. All of you. Thank you. I couldn't have done this webinar without you. Thank you, my village. Don't forget about my Astrology Alchemy podcast, which is weekly, and you can listen to it on the website on theedgesofchange.com. You can get the link in the handout. You also, on any of your podcast platforms, Apple, Google, you can just go find it, Astrology Alchemy Podcast. You're not crazy. You're astrologically sensitive. So now I'm going to tell you about my roadmap course. So stay on if you have any interest, because I have a special deal for those that are coming in the early bird. Are you longing to effectively navigate the edge of change between your outworn versions of self and who you long to be in these pivotal times? That's my expertise with the edge walkers, the edge folks, right? Because inner edges are so challenging. This is the place where your old life is over and you don't yet know who you're becoming or where you're going. I love this image. This is me on the Pacific Crest Trail at 59. Um, a couple months before turning 60, I was born in Canada and I wanted to walk back home symbolically for my 60th birthday. My birthday's in December, so I didn't do it in December. I did it in the fall. But this is day one of a 3-week backpacking journey. And it's like, wow, I walked the edge of the Cascade Crest with my beloved. And there was all kinds of like, I don't know if I can do this. What was I thinking? Is my body, my 59-year-old body, going to do this? There was wildfires. There was smoke. There was no food drop. It was a typical edge walk. I made it. It was extraordinary. And it was an embodied walking the edge of the inner edge of going into my 60s. And so I know, like many of us, but I know a lot about edges and what you need to do to bear the edge and to find a way through following your longing of where what you're being called to next. Now, would you like me to support you on your edges of change? I think you might. Some of you already are getting deep support. I want to invite you into my Transformation Journey Roadmap. It's a transformative do-it-yourself 7-week online course. I will open it up again on January 28th, and it is an amazing opportunity to be supported in your transformational journey work. It's based on my signature roadmap, Transformation Journey Roadmap, which is a 6-stage process that came through me out of my decades of personal transformation work and my work with thousands of clients and guidees and coaches and healing clients about how do you make change stick. You know, how you want to transform, you get all excited and then, okay, it's not sticking. How do you really make transformation stick so that you can go forward into the changes you want to be? And really what I put in this course are my secrets to break free of limiting toxic smallness mindsets, which we all struggle with. And really, it's about embracing the power of your inner wisdom. All this deep wisdom you carry that your enculturated self has hidden away from you. It's good to get it back. So the Transformation Journey Roadmap, it's an online course, and I have early bird enrollment between now and the 14th of the month. And regular enrollment is the 14th to the 28th, and then the 28th it'll open up. Now, as part of that, I'll be doing a live 7-week Q&A and practice support, but it's a do-it-yourself course. So even if you can't do it in 7 weeks, you can still really be served going at your own pace. Now, one of the things, or many of the things that I bring you in this course is how to recognize the roots of your limiting patterns. How do those inner wounded figures hold you hostage? You got to track them, okay? And to learn really effective inner practices to navigate your edges of change. Most of it is imagery work, like what we just did, but it's also journal work, it's embodied process work, it's several things. How to cultivate your innate wisdom, resources, and capacities. We all have them. How do you get them? And how to be responsible and willing to steward your empathetic and sensitive nature. Essentially, this is a roadmap. This course is for people like me, highly intuitive, empathetic, psychic folks who never got trained up how to hold that as a gift in our crazy culture and not get overwhelmed and get empathetic and just lose yourself because you're sponging off everything else going on. It's like, well, stop it. Okay, so how to know how to carry your sensitivity in an empowered way. Okay. And also how to stay aligned with what I call your inner visionary, which is your deeply intuitive, wise self, your visionary self, and all kinds of practices to keep letting that one be the one who has the keys to the car. That's essentially what's in this roadmap course. Now, what I'm doing, the regular fee for the roadmap course, the 7-week course, is $297. I've got all kinds of stuff in it. One of the special things I'm offering in the beginning of the year is 7 live Q&A sessions with me around the roadmap material. They're all going to be recorded, so if it doesn't work for you to come, there's a special extra value. Tuesdays at 5:30 starting February 7th, Pacific time. There's also the roadmap course is on this amazing platform that is completely searchable. There are 60 additional guided journeys in this platform, in addition to the actual course itself, which has seven modules, and 27 lessons. And you can search on anything. Like typical, there's all kinds of guided journeys. Let's say you're being wrestling with your inner critic. You can go to the platform and search inner critic, and you'll get a couple of guided journeys right there they can go right into. Or you're working with boundaries, or you're working with your escapist who wants to just check out. You just search on it, boom, it's right there. And the other huge gift I give you as a special, as I'm opening it up, is 3 months membership in my Vibes community, which is a private membership of outrageously awesome intuitive visionary characters, where we do guided journeys together. We have apprenticeship pods where people work with each other in small groups. There's special free workshops you can come to, but you get 3 months free in the Vibes membership coming in now. And I throw in one of my favorite courses, Chiron, The Wisdom of the Wound is a Doorway to Healing, which is a webinar I did, a workshop I did a couple years ago, which includes working with ancestral healing. So all of that, and you can look at the numbers, it's over $2,200, and I am actually giving you a discount of $100 for webinar participants, so that the whole thing is only $197. You have total lifetime access to it. Unlimited access to it. And again, you can do it at your own pace, but I will be doing a 7-week live course, live Q&A sessions to support people. And if you go to your resources, there is the link for it right there to go into the sales page, and just use the coupon code early TJR, all caps. Use that as your code and you'll get $100 off if you sign up by January 14th. So I can't say enough about it. Some of the folks still on the call have worked with the roadmap. If any of you want to say anything, you can. I'm not setting you up, but I know some of you have really been blessed by it. I probably will come out the worst for it. Okay, dear ones. Thank you all. Bless your new year. Thank you. Let's call it a wrap. All right.